I still remember the moment I first saw her, how her eyes caught mine across the crowded room. She sat across from me, unmoving, unmoved, and wouldn't look away. The air between us tightened. My heart slammed, so loud I thought she might hear it through my ribs. Something fierce and strange awakened in me. It was at a friend's birthday dinner. Soft golden light from candles dancing in low chandeliers. The deep hum of laughter, clinking glasses. I was perched at one end of a long farmhouse table, she at the other. I glanced over, almost by accident, just a flicker of curiosity, and there she was, steady, direct, not looking away. Her gaze held mine with an unshakable weight. That simple act, two people across a table staring, became the first thread in a tapestry I didn't know I wanted to weave. I remember her lips curled a little, neither a full smile nor anything cold, just that teasing half-smile that promised something forbidden. She tucked a lock of hair behind her ear. The candlelight caught in her hair, amber gleams, copper hues. Her skin glowed with warmth. Her posture relaxed yet unreadable, as if she had rehearsed this moment, or maybe she didn't have to. Maybe she was just fearless. My body reacted before my mind could catch up. My pulse roared. My throat went dry. I shifted in my seat so that my elbow lightly brushed the wood of the table, nearer to her. A small whisper of heat. I could feel the weight of her eyes, and my skin prickled with awareness, of belonging, of possibility. All evening, she did this, small movements. The slow lift of a glass, the long sip, the breath exhaled with measured calm. I noticed everything. The curve of her collarbone, how the cloth of her dress draped, the smell of perfume, something floral, something smoky, something clean. A fragrance that lingered in the air even after she left the room. I told myself, it's rude to stare. I leaned back, tried to look away, but then I caught her looking again. A flicker in her expression. Desire? Challenge? I couldn't say. And when our eyes met a second time, I understood. This was a game neither of us had announced, yet we were both playing. I wanted to lean forward, touch her hand, just once, to break the distance. But the risk tasted too sweet to ignore. My mouth was dry, my breath shallow. I imagined what it would be like if she moved closer. If I whispered something that broke the silence. If confession became action. The thought sent shivers up my spine. By the end of the night, conversations blurred. I laughed when I should laugh. I listened when I should listen. But always, under every word, I felt her presence across the table, her eyes anchored to mine. And when the evening ended, when people began to drift away, she stood. I stood. The world held its breath. Then she stepped forward, closer than I expected, and paused. Our hands almost touched as she drifted past me, maybe to leave, maybe to stay. The candlelight trembled in her hair. My heart did something wild. But then she turned, said something I couldn't catch, and walked away. I was left there, frozen, burning, with the scent of her still in the air, wondering, had she wanted me to follow? Could I have followed? And more than anything, would I see her again? The days that followed, I replayed that evening, over and over, each moment magnified, each glance sharpened. I found myself looking for her face in every crowd, every mirror. The memory of her eyes across the table haunted me. It wasn't just attraction, it was recognition, something deeper, something inaudible. Then, by chance or fate, I saw her again. A friends group gathering at a quiet bar, dim lights, velvety shadows. She was there, leaning back in a leather chair, legs crossed, a faint curve to her lips. I hadn't expected to see her, yet my chest tightened when I did. She saw me before I could hide, and for a moment, the air crackled. She came over. No fanfare, just footsteps and soft shoes on hardwood. She sat beside me, unexpectedly close, and smiled, as though greeting an equal, as though this proximity was our pact. Then she looked into my eyes and refused to look away again. We talked. Light things at first, work, mutual friends. But every so often, her gaze flicked to my lips, then back to my eyes. My throat tightened. My words came slower, measured, as if I were tasting one sip of wine too many. I caught the scent of her perfume mingled with the tang of liquor and warm air. My skin felt cold then hot, cold then hot. I felt exposed and alive. At some point she touched my hand. A brush, supposed to be accidental, a gesture of laughter or emphasis. But it lingered. She let her fingers stay there a beat too long. I felt a current run up my arm, into every nerve ending. I looked at her hand, then up to her face. She didn't pull away. Her eyes held mine, steady, dangerous in their softness. Inside me, there was this voice whispering, "Don't," and another saying, "Please." Two halves of me fighting. It felt wrong. Something about this was forbidden. Not because either of us was involved with someone else, but because I sensed she held secrets, desires she should not share, or I should not know. Her perfume, her laugh, the tilt of her head, everything called to some buried part of me. I wanted to unravel her, to know exactly what she wanted, to feel whether she desired me as fiercely as I desired her. But there was hesitation. I didn't know where this line lay. I didn't want to cross it wrongly. In that moment, I leaned forward, almost daring her to speak, to confess, to take a step. But before I could, the room lit up with someone else's arrival. A burst of laughter. She turned, greeted someone across the room. Her attention shifted, but I could feel the tension, a taut thread wavering. I swallowed, resisting the impulse to pull her back. She smiled at her friend, then looked back at me, and the distance was heavy, heavy. She lifted her glass. I lifted mine, clinked them softly, and for one heart-stopping second, our hands touched again, just wrists this time. And when she withdrew, the air between us felt hollow. She said goodnight eventually and walked away. I wanted to stop her, ask her to stay, confess something unspeakable, but I didn't. I watched her leave, my body still buzzing, my chest tight. The air smelled of bourbon and longing. I went home replaying that touch, that gaze, wondering if I had misread everything. Was it desire in her eyes, or something more dangerous? Competition, curiosity, loneliness? I fell asleep with my skin tingling, and when I woke, the memory of her hand against mine haunted me. I didn't know where this was going, but I couldn't stop wanting it, and I couldn't stop fearing it. The next day, I found a text waiting, on my phone, unseen until dawn. It was from her. Just one line. "I keep thinking about last night." My stomach flipped. My mind flooded with possibilities. I responded with something safe, something measured. We made plans, just coffee. Morning light. The safest possible meeting. But even that felt charged. When I saw her at the cafe, she was dressed casually. A soft sweater, hair falling loose. The smell of fresh coffee grounded me, but her nearness loosened things inside. Her eyes were brighter in daylight. She smiled easily. We talked about trivial things, traffic, weather, work, but under every sentence, a tension pulsed, unspoken but alive between breaths. I noticed, when I reached for sugar, she shifted so our knees brushed under the table. I could feel her pulse at the base of her throat when she laughed. The sound made me ache. The touch of her sleeve against my skin sent little jolts. My own fingers trembling as I stirred my coffee, as though at any moment they might reach across and touch her face. I thought, what if I kissed her? Right there, over latte and clinking spoons. I imagined the heat of her lips, the taste of coffee, and something else. I imagined her hands, her breath, the silence that would fall between us. But then I hesitated. She was supposed to be a friend? Or maybe more. But boundaries were unclear. Lines were blurry. I didn't know if I should stay or push. And then, as if reading my hesitation, she asked something personal, about regrets, about things we'd hidden from others. I saw vulnerability flicker in her eyes. She touched her own arm, as if waiting for someone to offer solace. I felt like I should offer mine, should reach out, but words stuck in my throat. Instead, I said something small, but real, that I'd never said. She listened, close now, her gaze soft, her breath shallow. Then she leaned forward slightly, the light catching her skin in a way that made my mouth dry. Her perfume again, something floral, something intimate. I wanted to bury my face in her hair, touch her chin. I wanted to make this moment irreversible. But I paused, swallowed, looked away for a second. As I looked back, she was watching me. Not with judgment. With hunger, maybe. With longing. Something dangerous, something thrilling. My chest clenched. I knew I was dancing on the edge. She stood to leave. I stood too. Outside, the sun was soft. She paused at her car. I half expected a confession, something daring. But instead, she kissed me. On the cheek. Soft. Electric. My skin burned where her lips brushed. My heart shattered gently with longing and relief. She smiled, got in, drove off. I stood there, stunned, breathless. The world felt too bright, too real. I wanted more. I wanted the defiance of desire. I wanted to push boundaries. But was I ready? And was she? Over the next few nights, I dreamed of her. In the dreams, she edged closer, just beyond reach. A whisper, a hand, a breath. A soft tread across hardwood floors. Her silhouette in moonlight. I woke thrumming, my sheets damp, my skin alive with echoes. We started texting, late nights, playful banter, confession of fantasies. I told her things I'd never admitted. She told me things she'd never said out loud. My fantasy folded around hers, not explicit, but visceral. A secret desire to be seen, to be claimed, not in a possessive way, but in a way that acknowledged everything I was and everything I'd hidden. She asked me once, "Do boundaries scare you?" I hesitated. I asked back what she meant. She said, "The kind that we can't cross, but want to." And I realized she meant us. The possible us. The forbidden us. Because there were parts of her life I didn't know. Maybe I couldn't know. But still I wanted. One evening, she came over. It was meant to be casual. Wine, music, a shared movie. But in the dim glow of her living room, everything shifted. The air smelled of warm wood, old books. I poured her a glass of red wine. She sat close on the couch. The fabric of her sweater soft under my fingertips when I brushed hair from her face. Her shoulder pressed to mine. I felt her breath, heard its catch when I said something funny. I saw the sparkle in her eyes. Our legs touched. There was no flinching. I didn't try to move away. I wanted the contact, even as panic fluttered in the belly. Am I doing something wrong? Is she comfortable? Is this crossing her line? Or mine? But I trusted the way she looked at me, trusted the quiet consent in her posture, in the way her body leaned toward me. Then she told me something. A secret fantasy she'd buried for years. Someone she'd admired from afar. Someone she'd never let close, until now. She confessed that part of her longing had always been for someone dangerous. Someone who made her heart beat too fast. Someone like me, or maybe not like me, but close enough that the danger was in possibility, not action. I felt a thrill, of pride, fear, excitement. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to tell her I was dangerous, but I also wanted to promise safety. She seemed to sense my storm. She reached and held my hand. Soft grip. Simple. Enough. Enough to tether me. Then she leaned forward. I tilted my head. Our faces were inches apart. I could feel the warmth from her lips, the breath between us. I closed my eyes, expecting a kiss, but she pulled back, smiled, a tremor in her throat. "You're mine," she said softly. In a way. And before I could breathe, the tension snapped. A sound at the door. Someone arrived unexpectedly. Our eyes shifted. The moment broken. She stood up, flushed. I sat, heart pounding. She said goodnight quickly, grabbing her coat. I walked her to the door. At the threshold, she brushed her fingers along my cheek. So light. So electric. Then she left. I stood there, watching her leave. Bleeding desire and longing. My pulse ringing in my ears. I wanted to chase her. I wanted to hold her close. But I didn't. I watched. Alone in her doorway's frame, as the door closed. I was unraveling. Every mundane task, coffee, walking to the bus stop, typing at my desk, was haunted by her image. I replayed that breath at the threshold, the grip of her hand, the way she'd said, "You're mine." And the guilt came in, not because I was doing something wrong, but because I was wanting something forbidden. Because this attraction had shades I hadn't anticipated. Her texts grew darker, more intimate. She sent me a message at midnight. "If I came over now, would you let me stay?" I stared at the screen. My heart thudded. I wrote back, "I'd want you." But I added, "Are you sure?" She replied, "I've never been more sure." She came. Door closed behind her. Silence hung heavy. We drank wine. Cheap, strong. Music low. She sat on the edge of my bed, not touching, just looking. Moonlight slanted across the room. Every shadow seemed alive. I reached out and touched her knee. She jerked slightly, not startled, but caught, like an animal whose wild heart has been whispered to. Her eyes closed for a moment. I slid my hand up, palm grazing soft fabric, skin beneath. Her breath caught. The line between what I wanted to do and what I should do felt razor thin. My own body pulled taut. I wanted to move closer, let lips press, let fingers trace. But restraint pulsed inside me. Because maybe this was crossing a boundary. Because I didn't want to hurt her, or myself. Because I could sense consequences. She moved then, just a shift, and our faces aligned. nose to nose. Her lips paused near mine. My breath thick. The world became only us. My mind screamed to lean in. But I hesitated. Realized I was holding back not just for propriety, but for something deeper. Respect, fear, love, or its echo. She whispered something so soft I barely heard. "Do you want this?" And I realized I couldn't lie. I nodded. It was more than desire. It was need. A longing that pulled me apart. She closed the gap. Our lips met. Soft at first, like flame flickering, then more, a slow burn. Everything else melted. Heat, breath, the taste of wine, the perfume, the brush of her hands in my hair. I felt the world contract and then expand beyond memory. But just as it felt unavoidable, the sound of my phone dropped. Loud, sudden. It shattered the spell. She pulled away. We froze. She looked at the phone. I watched her face, something like regret or fear. She stood abruptly, gathered her things. I wanted to reach out, stop her, but she was already walking toward the door. I saw the light of the street outside, heard the hum of cars. Then the door closed behind her. I stood in the emptied room, trembling. The kiss, the warmth, the touch, everything felt real, but so fragile. And I wondered, had I crossed a line? Was she regretting me already? Or was she going to come back? When I woke alone, everything hurt. Limbs, heart, mind. The sheets were cold. I smelled her perfume still lingering. The absence felt heavier than any presence. I replayed the kiss. The way her skin tasted. The sound of her whisper. I wondered if she had dreamed of me too. There was a message later that morning. "I'm sorry." My chest clenched. 1,000 thoughts raced. Was I to blame? Didn't she want this? I wrote back, "Don't be sorry." But inside, I trembled with doubt. Did she feel regret? Was this too much, too fast? We didn't meet that day. We texted in fragments. She said she needed time. I understood, yet the idea of waiting felt like torture. I imagined her naked in thought, wondering if her warmth had been unwanted. I imagined that maybe she'd pull away forever. That night, I invited silence. But I couldn't sleep. My mind created a fantasy between us. A scenario where we were together, not hiding. Where every lingering look, every whispered promise, every stolen touch was no longer forbidden, but ours. I painted it in my head. Late nights, soft skin, trust, confession. By morning, I had an idea. I texted her, asking simply to see her again. To talk. To sit across from her. To see if her eyes would still hold mine. She replied, "Yes." We met in a park. Spring air, the scent of blossoms. She sat across from me on a bench. Birds singing far away. I wanted the simplicity of that moment to hold everything. No pretenses. No wine. Just us and what had happened. I noticed her fingers trembling as she reached for her coffee cup. I noticed shadows beneath her eyes. I wondered if she had cried. If she regretted. I reached across and touched her hand. She didn't flinch. I held it. Warm. Solid. I said, "I want this," meaning both her and the possibility between us. She looked down, then looked up, eyes glistening. There was conflict there, craving and guilt intermingled, desire and fear. Then she surprised me. She leaned over and kissed my palm. Gentle, fragile, so soft I almost wept. Her lips whispered against my skin. And when I looked at her again, I saw a fragile resolve. She said, "I want more than accidental moments." My heart surged. I believed her. But then she paused, pulled away slightly. I searching mine, and said, "But I'm not sure I can give you what you want." Her confession cracked something inside me. Because I wanted her, even if uncertain. I wanted that impossible thing. But hearing her doubt stung. She stood then. I wanted to say stay, to promise safety. But she said goodnight softly and walked away. And I realized, the biggest boundary was not physical, it was trust. And perhaps fear of being hurt. After that night, something shifted. We were closer, yet more fragile. Our conversations held more weight. We talked about fears, hers, vulnerability, history, pain, mine, shame, longing, what I deserved. She listened. I listened. Every now and then, we'd close the distance, literally and emotionally. One afternoon, she invited me to a secluded cabin belonging to a mutual friend. A weekend alone, she said. Nature, firelight, no distractions. My heart hammered with both excitement and dread, because being alone with her meant risk. But I couldn't resist. We arrived late dusk. A log fire crackled. She flicked on lamps, shadows dancing across her face. She stood too close when I entered the room. Our eyes met. Silence spoke louder than words. She noticed me shiver. Reached out, just her fingertips, tracing along my spine, fingertips humming. My breath caught in my throat. Then she said she had another confession. She'd invited someone else, someone she cared about, a person she'd never told me about. A confidant. Someone she saw sometimes, someone from her past. Not in romantic terms, she said, but in terms of influence, importance. This friend had been deeply woven into her emotions. And now, she was unsure where I fit, if I could ever replace the space that friend occupied in her heart. I felt a twist, jealousy, betrayal, confusion. The fantasy she had shared earlier, the dangerous desire, had a rival. And though she insisted nothing romantic had happened, the idea of someone else so close wounded me. I tried to contain it, smiled, said I understood. But the truth was, seeing her torn between me and this other bond hurt more than anything. That night, as rain tapped on windows, we sat by the fire. She curled into me under a blanket. I held her head against my chest, but heat and desire still simmered. Her breath in my hair, her warmth. I wanted to tell her I loved her. I wanted to claim her, but I also wanted to respect her space. We lay there, skin against fabric, heartbeats mingling. Then she whispered something. You make me feel something I've always been too scared to let in. Her voice caught. She pressed closer. I wrapped my arms around her, my fingers threading in her hair. She smelled like rain, wood smoke, and something tender. Hope, maybe. My lips brushed her neck. She exhaled sharply. I felt her hand drift to my cheek. And for a moment, everything was right. And then she pulled back. The rain mirrored in her eyes. Guilt, fear, longing. I don't know if I can promise you forever, she said quietly. But I can promise tonight. My chest clenched. Tonight. A promise and limitation both. I nodded, though inside part of me broke. Because I wanted forever. Because I was already yours. We closed our eyes, letting the firelight and shadows do the rest. But just when I believed everything might shift, she withdrew in sleep. Her breathing steady, mine jagged. I touched her hand. She didn't shift. Outside, thunder rolled. And I realized, longing is a storm without shelter. That morning light came soft and pale. The rain had passed. The cabin smelled of damp earth and possibility. She lay beside me, sleeping. I watched the rise and fall of her chest, the faint tremor in her lashes. I traced a fingernail along her skin, arm, shoulder, the line where neck curves. So many wantings lived in that touch. I didn't wake her. I thought of everything. The danger, the shame, the boundaries crossed, and still ahead. I thought of the other person she'd told me about, how jealousy had burned me, how much I'd loved her even when I feared commitment. But most of all, I realized I loved her because of her fear, and how she loved, and how she held back, and how she dared to lean in anyway. She woke sometime later. Soft eyes, the glow of dawn in her hair. She kissed my forehead. The kind of kiss that holds apology, longing, forgiveness. I held her close. We didn't speak at first. Just listened to the quiet, the breath of morning, the beating of our hearts. Eventually, she whispered, I'm afraid. Her voice small. Of being hurt. Of hurting you. I nodded. Me too, I whispered. But I want to try. We talked for hours, about trust, about love, about desire that doesn't shame but uplifts. I told her what I'd wanted all along. Not just the passion, but the safety. Not just the stolen moments, but a home in her arms, even if temporary. She confessed she'd never thought someone could see her so clearly, and still stay. Later, she pressed closer. Our bodies fitting in that way lovers do after permission, after confession. Soft touches, lips that remember more than hunger. They remember kindness. I'd been holding back, saving pieces of myself. She touched all the places I'd kept secret, her hands gentle, reverent, her breath warm, her skin trembling under my touch. And I, awed by the grace of this embrace, let her in wholly. We went past the brink, not in explicitness, but in union. Two souls leaning, touching, whispering. The world fell away. Her body curved into mine, every nerve alive. And there was fulfillment, not in conquering the boundary, but in the consent, the mutual surrender, the tenderness. After, we lay together, skin warm, tangled in sheets, in silence. Outside, birds sang. Light drained into the room. I held her, felt her heartbeat, slow and steady. I thought, this is what longing is for. This union of vulnerability and strength, of fear and courage. We parted eventually, for that weekend, but with something changed. There was no promise of forever, yet there was something more. Mutual respect, desire, and an unspoken pact to meet again. I drove her home at dusk, our hands clasped, silence more eloquent than speech. At her doorstep, she kissed me softly, a promise of what might come. As I drove away, the road stretched ahead, lamplit, endless. I thought about love, how messy it is, how it demands risk. I thought about her eyes across the table and how much weight a look can carry. I thought about boundaries, about crossing them, about consent, about need. My heart was full, yet open, wounded, yet hopeful.